The Lilydale Museum has many treasures, and you are in for a special treat. This is Wednesdays with Willa. I am your host, Willa White, and this is my weekly podcast show that airs on Wednesday mornings at 10 a.m. Eastern on my Facebook page, Willa White Medium. It'll also go out on the Lilydale Assembly Facebook page as well as my YouTube channel. And Lilydale has so many cherished places and spaces, and none more than this Lilydale Museum, where we have so many historical artifacts. This is year 6 of Wednesdays with Willa, so there are a lot of archive videos of past shows. I usually have a special guest on the show. We talk about a topic relating to either spiritualism, mediumship, healing, faith, family, or more. And there have been great opportunities for me to show the museum with Ron Nagy, our historian, and he's been so generous to open up the museum this morning for a special access tour. And I just want Ron to say hello. Hi, Ron.
Hi.
So Ron's been a delight to work with over the years to share Lilydale's history. And you should look back for the archive videos of when we went to the Assembly Hall. And you went through all the pictures there. And we've done slate writing. We've done spirit art. We've done all kinds of great shows. We'll have more with Ron another time. And today we have with us Ray Taft. Ray is a Lilydale resident, and he's also one of the wonderful hosts, the guides of the ghost walks here in Lilydale, and you do a lot with the history.
Yes.
And it's beautiful what you've been able to share with other people as you walk through the streets of Lilydale and really help it come alive for folks. And look back at the archive videos of when Ray's been on the show before, because he's shown us places like the Lilydale Auditorium and the Lilydale Maplewood Hotel, places that we really need to know more about to cherish this history of Lilydale. And Ray is here as a special request to go through some of the people of Lilydale's past. When you come here into the Lilydale Museum, you're going to see a lot of photos and pictures of people who have really helped to build the foundations of Lilydale, to maintain Lilydale, and we want to honor them today. And most likely this will be a part 1, because there's always more.
I will begin by saying that the basic reason for being here is the history of this building as an educational residence. But more importantly, it has become even more so in these past years. It started out as a schoolhouse for many, many years. A couple of generations of children came here to be educated in a proper manner and carry on their lives into their futures. 3 of my family, 2 of my uncles and my mother, attended school here when they were children. If you were to walk up the stairway in this building to the 2nd floor, when kids graduated from this school, they would either carve their initials up there on one of the boards as you walk up there.
Ron took us up there one day, actually.
I can
so we
show
were able
you.
to go up the stairs and to the upstairs. So if anybody wants to look in the archive videos, you'll see the upstairs. And right now Ray is looking at a photo.
I can show you a picture of 2 of those, my 2 uncles. My Uncle Elmer on the right and my Uncle George on the left. There is no picture of Mom, but she was here too as a child growing up.
So Ray's been able to soak up so much of the Lilydale history. His family has been a wonderful presence here in Lilydale for many, many years.
Since they cut the first tree.
Since they cut the first tree,
Basically,
folks.
When my grandmother's father, who was a master builder from the village of Silver Creek, first came here in the early years of the founding of this community, he built a cottage here on Library Street for the family to spend their summers out of town and in this beautiful setting. And along came life to them passing through generations, 6 generations of my family now.
6 generations.
But
It's
the
been a really
generations of all of my life thus far have encompassed knowing of many of the people whose pictures exist on this wall.
Yes.
Peg Johnson.
Oh yes, Peggy Johnson.
Peg Johnson, whom I grew up with here in town.
Yeah.
This girl could grab a rope behind a power boat and water ski
Yeah.
better than anybody on the lake.
I have heard tell
She
of her
was
exploits
good.
with that water skiing.
And,
Wow.
and she and her companion Sharon Snowman lived here together for many, many years until both of them passed on.
Yeah, in a house next to the Forest Temple.
Mm-hmm.
And Sharon Snowman, for many years, worked with the NSAC, which is the National Spiritist Association of
Yes.
Churches, and really kind of held that pillar in Lilydale and also for spiritualism.
Well, and this is, as is said, all of the people in your community are what unifies it. And every face that will pass by on these walls.
And Peggy's family was very much into Lilydale.
Peggy's family, clear
and
back to her
helping with the board.
grandfather, Bill, have been principal players in the unification of this village over the years. We get others. The Reverend Joseph Merrill, from before my childhood on through the ages,
Yes.
a proponent and teacher of spiritualism, another person who worked in the community and on the board of directors to unify this community and the surrounding area. William Hammond.
Billy Hammond.
Little Billy was considered the dean of modern spiritualism due to his understanding of the presence of the God Spirit in the lives of all. This was a man who understood what it takes for us to communicate with one another. He lived in the South and was exposed to many Spanish people, and this man learned to speak Spanish by taking the Holy Bible, written in English and written in Spanish, and transposing the language so that he could communicate with his fellow human Spanish people.
Oh,
Yes.
wonderful.
Billy Turner. Billy was here his entire life and lived in Casadega over on North Main Street and served Lilydale and spiritualism and humanity up until the day of his death, basically. And in doing so, became a friend to many, as all of these people do. Clyde and Hannah Yoder, old friends from my younger years, my early teenage years, up until the time they made their passing into the next life form.
I love how on his hat it has a special Lilydale band.
Well, during those years, we would get a good many of them.
So they were very helpful in a lot of the activities, the fundraising.
Yes, and Hannah was a medium, Clyde was a healer. Mm-hmm. And they worked in that area, those two areas, to be part of the expression of what the community is here for. Mm-hmm. Most of these people were mediums. Reverend Raymond Torrey, his wife Alberta, second wife, after the passing of his wife Bessie many years before. Ray ran a trucking company for many, many years. And the man had an extremely fine tenor voice, as did his wife before she had a stroke, Bessie. And they entertained during the summer season in this community down in the auditorium. And Ray sang until the day he passed away. And I remember walking up the street past Ray and saying hello to him, sitting out there in his wheelchair because his legs had become so weak he couldn't walk anymore. Mm-hmm. And I went up to my garden and picked a couple of great, big, beautiful, red, ripe tomatoes and brought them back down. And that thing which is most important to me in sharing my life with others is looking into their eyes and watching them smile. Because when I handed those tomatoes to Ray, he had a smile on his face I won't ever forget.
And Ray was also a medium.
A medium and a man who could do just about anything and did. If you could drive an old truck from many, many years ago, he taught me how to drive the old fire truck just right that we used to have.
Okay.
Because you had to double clutch it and shift and did it. And he said, that's how you do it. And I says, gotcha, Ray.
See, mediums are in many ways regular people, and they had lives and they had their own adventures beyond the world of mediumship. Yeah. This world we have that we see, but then also the spirit world. And I know Alberta she was always very cheerful. And when I would meet with her and chat, sometimes she was just kind of a delightful little...
She was a people person,
yeah,
very much a people person. This gentleman here, the Reverend James Buchanan, another man with an extremely fine Irish tenor. Jim came to us in his youth and spent his summers here at Lilydale providing counseling and entertainment to people. He was an off-the-wall guy that was always
pretty
fun.
Wild. Yeah.
He was a heartfelt person in many, many ways, and his passing saddened the community greatly.
Yeah. And he served as a medium for many years.
Oh, for many, many years. He served the platform in so many different organizations in the community too. A man with a fine eye and a big heart. Cecil Savage. Cecil, I knew in his later years, but as a young man, Cecil served in the military, as many of the people do, and he became a master carpenter. When Cecil came here with his family, who were young children at the time, they moved in, and Cecil, as the man he was, began to organize himself into the community so that he could be of best value to the community. And through all of the physical impediments that the man faced up until the final days of his life, he was still out there doing something, which it speaks very
service to others and service to Lilydale.
We'll go back up here to the top. Now, here's another man, speaking of people with extremely fine voices. Arthur Myers had a baritone voice, verging on tenor. Another gentleman who spent most of his life here during the good weather, of course. He was a snowbird,
sure,
but he served here for many, many years as our postmaster also. And a little story that I tell on ghost walks and to anybody whose ear I can bend is that on the night of December 6th, 1952, Arthur Myers, my Uncle Elmer, my Aunt Juanita, my mother, and my grandmother sat in the dining room at the table until 4 o'clock in the morning playing pinochle. And then my mother's water broke. 7 o'clock that morning, they got me.
And then you were born. Ray Taft was born.
And Art was there playing pinochle. Now, I have to come to this lovely lady here because this is someone whose family has been here nearly as long as mine, I believe. Part of the family is still here. I believe now all of her children have passed on. She had 5 children, 3 boys, 2 girls. No, Sandy's still with us. She has 1 that I know of.
Okay.
But
the candies, yeah.
Yes, many, many years ago, my grandmother and I agreed that we would spend the winter in Florida with my Uncle George, who we saw earlier. He was down near West Palm Beach, an orthodontic technician. And Helen at the time, and her then companion, Hubert Haskell, and my grandmother and I drove in, I believe, a 1956 Mercury, towing a trailer behind the Merc down to Florida for the winter. Well, we got out to a little carnival that was being held, and Helen, a brave and stoic woman, said, well, Raymond, I'm going to do something that I haven't done in many, many years, but we'll get through it. And she took me on my first ride on a Ferris wheel.
Oh, nice.
So that is a point in my life that I was 6 years old. And I do remember that, and that face there was always a face that you could count on if you needed to know which way the wind blew. You could count on Helen, as with most of these people.
In what other ways did she serve Lilydale?
Helen, as I understand, was the youngest medium ever to grace the platform here at Lilydale. She was an extremely organized woman with book work and organizing records in the such.
So how young, do you recall?
When she served?
Yes.
She was 18 years old.
18 years old when she served?
Yes.
Yeah.
Her son told me that, my buddy Byron. Reverend Betty Putnam came to Lilydale as a young woman and served as a medium in her young life and raised her family here. And her late husband, Mark Putnam, was also extremely active. He was a retired man. I believe Mark was an engineer. And the two of them came here in their late years and spent the good weather here, and came back during those good weather times. And Betty and Mark both understood that it was extremely important to spend as much time as they could with children in those off months of the summer when they were out of school, reinforcing the fact that life was an ongoing learning project.
Yes.
And did so for the entirety of their lives. Now, down here are Carol and Alvin Gasper. These were two people that came together in their middle years and raised a second family for themselves here at Lilydale. Both of them extremely active in the spiritualist movement, but not only that, extremely active in helping to bond people together in the community. All of these people that are here on this wall have worked to do that in a pretty efficient manner.
And, mediumship was so important to them. I know Carol in her later years actually became a registered medium in Lilydale. And some people might remember her. She had extremely long hair, very long hair. It was like Crystal Gale, kind of long brown hair.
Carol had a great deal also in her blood of Native American influence. And she was a lady that you could talk to in extremely natural terms, and the work that you got done mentally and verbally between you in a conversation was extremely valuable when you did it. Alvin also was somebody who was an extremely well-educated man and took that education and placed it into everything that he was involved with. Norma and Otto Rigg. Norma and Otto were latecomers to the Dale, but the two of them together in their later years had become extremely interested in metaphysical things and the workings of human faith, what it involved, why it was as it was on so many different levels, so many different religious venues. Norma was someone that you could talk to about just completely any religion that existed on the face of this earth, because she was extremely well studied in theosophy. Otto was also well studied in it, but what brought Otto into a greater understanding of it, I believe, was the fact that he was an engineer, a mechanical engineer of the caliber that I do believe that he may have, in some instances, worked with the space program, because he was extremely, having talked to Otto, he was extremely interested in those sorts of things. The very close rationale between having something that worked completely the way it was supposed to and not having it and waiting until you did, for sure. Betty Schultz. Betty and Joyce were extremely close friends. Betty grew up here. Joyce grew up in the city, I believe. But in Joyce's coming here to Lilydale, it livened Betty up to the point where the two of them became best pals. In Joyce becoming interested in this faith that we espouse here, she ran into Betty and became even more so interested in it. But along with that, Joyce became extremely interested in letting the rest of the world know who was here, when they were here, why they were here, and what they did while they were here. And both of them, I must say, Joyce as a historian and Betty as a driving force in this community and an excellent medium, worked tirelessly to get the job done. And what we have here today on these walls and in the accompanying rooms, a great deal of why it's here is because of Joyce.
Yes.
And the friendship that she shared with Betty.
And Joyce, we should state, is Ron Nagy's mentor in history, and she's a big reason why Ron is even here in the Lilydale Museum. She shared so many of the stories and the wealth of information and was able to pass that down to her young Padawan learner, the apprentice, as it were, that Ron became for her, and good friends. And Betty, she was such an amazing medium in many ways, and I know even in her later years, she had just a real understanding of connection with spirit. She would talk to them daily. Her family is still involved with Lilydale, and in fact, her son-in-law, Ron Skowronski, who's been on the show before, Ron is also one of the Ghost Walk guides.
My co-conspirator.
Yes, your co-conspirator, Ron Skowronski, and that's his mother-in-law up there, and her daughter, Cecila, has worked tirelessly in the library for so many years, and we're grateful for that family association and the love that's there. Both of them, what I observed is they always had a very sharp kind of wit.
Oh,
that was very present. So if you ever feel these ladies around you, it'll probably because they're making a quick little zing comment to let you know if you're on or off of things.
Now this lady here, I would almost dare to say that picture was taken
Winifred
overseas.
Glenn. Yeah.
Winnie came to us in her late years, still carrying that Scottish brogue that was present in her life. And she was an animated person who had lived a life abroad in her home country and then come here to the United States and could tell stories that would absolutely keep you mystified for hours. She lived alone, and I'm sure as I am who I am, that Winifred Glenn was as powerful of a medium and teacher because she was a friend to everybody that walked by. I never heard the lady have a bad word about anybody. Winnie had some cats, and she stayed there in the house and was grateful to the Almighty to be here and to be able to share her life with those around her.
Lovely.
Steve Florence and his wife lived here for many, many years with their family.
And
Steve,
she was a medium.
She was a medium, and Steve was a chiropractor. I remember my grandmother going down to Steve to have her back adjusted. I didn't know Mrs. because she had passed on probably just shortly after I was born or before. But I remember Steve walking up the street with a Chesterfield in his hand.
That's great. And just for
Always
people who
the
might be
smile.
joining us midstream here, this is Wednesdays with Willa, and I have Ray Taft here, and we are at the LD Muesum, and we're going through the pictures that are on a wall that many people maybe might walk past and not understand or not realize how wonderful these people have been for the history of Lilydale. So this is people of Lilydale's past. This is the episode for that. And Ray is sharing some sweet stories about folks.
George Kincaid.
Oh yeah,
Reverend George. we both have things that we can share with the world about George. George was Spanish and Scottish. And he had a sense of humor unmatched by virtually any comedian on the television today. He was a strong voice for this faith and a strong man.
Literally.
Powerful in physicality and powerful in
He worked out a lot. He was always at the gym.
and it was that kept George, and it's a shame that we don't have a picture of his missus here, because Sylvia was as strong of a proponent of faith, all faith, as any person walking the face of this earth. And she could express herself in that method extremely eloquently. She was an extremely learned spiritual person. Along with George, the two of them, they were a match made in heaven.
Oh, I do believe that. Absolutely.
They were a match made in heaven.
They knew how to take each other and in all the best ways.
And absolutely.
And George was a Southern man, a gentleman, when he was around me, and a deep timbered Southern voice, like molasses. It was really fun to listen to.
I used to call him the Wolfman. Like Wolfman Jack, because he had a voice just like Wolfman Jack. Oh my God. God bless them all.
Yeah, he was a medium here in Lilydale, registered medium, and they were just a fun couple.
Yeah, and it is that in having known persons here that brings back that fun.
Sure.
Taking a ride
on the Ferris wheel for you with
Helen
Candy.
And knowing the hours that I've spent with so many of these people conversing about life in general, and virtually every person whose portrait hangs on this wall, if you had a problem, you could count on them to help you sort it out. And then it wasn't a problem anymore. And in most cases, they would tell you, you really don't have a problem unless it escalates. So let's talk about it.
Let's talk about
We'll go over here across the top.
Okay.
Well, we've got multiple pictures. This gentleman is still alive, Ernest, but he has passed. Albert has passed, of course. John has passed. John was an import here who was another person that could tell you where
Oh, there's an even better picture of John on another wall.
Let's go over here and we'll have a look at John and his,
that Ron just pointed out
his
to us.
later years.
Thank you, Ron.
I always think of John as a very simple answered person, matter of factly. If you spoke to John about something, he told you in as few words as he possibly needed to utter what the game was about.
Yes.
And that same smile always came across his face.
Yeah, he was a medium who served here on the platform in Lilydale and at the Stump and the Temple, and he was always a delightful kind of comedic flair, good at making a whole crowd laugh with his quips. And
that is something that we look forward to in that particular venue, but it's something that we look forward to in life especially. We look to be entertained.
Yeah,
to a
he's
degree
the entertainer for sure.
By one another. And in our doing that, we raise that vibratory measure of our existence to a point where we're able to carry on from day to day.
Yes. So the reason we went to John's picture, the second picture, is because he's up here with Vince. And oh, there's Beverly Burdick Carey. We should just mention her. She was a registered Lilydale medium. She's the one on the left in the blonde hair. And many times she would wear the white collar. You know, she had been ordained and she wore the white collar, and she really did help and serve as a medium, but also as a minister here in Lilydale. And there's Dodie Prees as well. Remember Dodie?
Oh, yes.
And then she's in that kind of pink color in the middle. And then we have Lillian Farnham, who was instrumental in getting the Lilydale Endowment Fund.
Eben and Lillian,
together.
Yes. They came here and spent their last years helping to organize community and keep it solvent. And were persons who were extremely interested in people.
Right.
Very, very interested in people. If we can get over here into the corner, Willa.
We're in the corner, folks.
Now, part of Lois T's family is still here at the Dale and in the surrounding area. But most people here will remember Lois as someone who was a natural to be involved in everything that she possibly could to help community, especially children. Lois oversaw the workings of our Lyceum program for many, many, many years.
Lyceum is the equivalent of Sunday school for spiritualists, for children.
And it carries back way into the times of the early spiritualist method. It was considered extremely important that children needed to be instilled with an understanding of faith, regardless of which faith they chose.
Yes.
Because in essence, all faiths interact to give us a more complete life.
Yes. Yes.
Fanny Swift was here since Moses walked the earth, I believe. Fanny,
I don't know if she'd want you to say that.
she'd give me hell for it, I'm sure. But Fanny raised her family here and worked tirelessly to raise her family and to be a part of human communication. She worked with the Red Cross for years, and when she retired, she came here to Lilydale, having been a resident, but she came back from her retirement to work as a member of the Assembly Board of Directors and keep things on an even keel, which whether it be the Assembly Board of Directors or the town board in any surrounding village here in the area, people will know that that's not an easy job.
Oh,
and
the balancing act of...
And she was that type of a person who understood that raising a family and keeping it in order was the first order of business in keeping a community together. And she worked up until her last breath doing it. I'm going to come down here in this next picture here, and the gentleman that we see here with his missus.
There's a picture within the picture.
Is Mr. Ed Bowden. Many, I hope, people might remember a little section of poetry in the Dunkirk Evening Observer, one of our local newspapers here. It was poetry that was penned by that man, Ed Bowden, who called himself the Hermit of the Chautauqua Hills.
Oh.
And he was, I thought, a rather reclusive person in his later years because he was alone after Mrs. passed away. But what Ed did in his lifetime was to consider the needs of humanity as much as any other person that I have met in my lifetime. We had an understanding smile that we shared between one another when we greeted on occasions. I think Ed was always a busy man. I'm sure that he was as well read as most scholars, and he was as well penned as most scholars too. Warlow Morris was a gentleman with more than a drop of native blood in his veins. And his ability to connect with people was on such a natural level, as I remember him, that it was hard not to always go over and shake this man's hand, because the smile that came on his face is indelibly etched in my mind and will be.
That friendliness persisted, and in what ways did he...
Warlow was a healer, and he was a natural healer. I understood by the conversations that we had that he was one of those people who understood old-style healing and homeopathic pharmaceuticals, that type of a thing, nice. Where this was the type of a man who could walk out into a woodlot and find food and find medicine. And
forage for it.
And he was also, he had an understanding of natural chiropractic appliance too. I went to Warlow's house one day to meet with him on something, and he said, "You're having problems with your back, aren't you?" I said, "Well, yeah, as a matter of fact, I am." And he said, "Cross your arms in front of you." And he put his arms under mine. And this man, in his late 70s, picked my body up off the ground and shook this rack of bones and realigned my spine.
Wow. How many years ago was that?
Long time ago. This gentleman here, Bill Colvin.
That's important, because guess what, guys? This man used to own my house many, many years ago. He was a medium here in Lilydale. And if you're familiar at all with my house, it has the posts like that, and it has that thing that goes up on the window and above. Kept all of those.
Bill was as Scotch as they come.
Oh, yes.
Bill was a Scotsman. I believe his wife was pretty much the same way. But Bill came here, as many have, with a thirst for becoming more faithful to humanity, and gave as much of himself and his family and to his family as he possibly could. There were a bunch of them. Bill, I think, had about 7 kids.
Yeah, he had a bunch of children.
Had a bunch of
He
kids,
yeah.
and came here.
He had red hair.
Oh, flaming red Scottish hair, absolutely.
And he was a registered medium here in Lilydale.
He was a very philosophical man, and I recall a time when Bill and I had conversation about military service. And it was the only time I ever heard him speak of it and what it had meant to him, because he was part of the Queen's Army in the Sudan as a young man.
Wow.
And the look that he got on his face let me to know that he had experienced a part of life that most people really don't want to have to.
That's very true. And I know at one point he had a lot of circles in his home and would sit for spirit. And some of the folks here in Lilydale still remember him for that.
Yeah, and Bill is not a person that is easily forgotten, because the kindness that he exhibited and the faith that he enhanced in his life, and as well as enhancing it in others' lives, was very, very important to him because of the life that he'd gone through in his younger years.
Yes.
Keep on keeping on.
That's right. That's right.
Albert Batten.
Oh, let's go on up here. There's
Was
Al.
a citizen of Canada of Scottish descent, I do believe. And Albert, I want to say it was the Red Cross that he worked with throughout much of his career tirelessly, and brought that ability as an organizationalist and a free-thinking gentleman to Lilydale, drawn here to spend as much of his time as he possibly could, he and Mrs., and was instrumental in bringing a lot of formative ideas to the community, because he knew what community meant and what organization meant too. Now Martha Rusbolt.
And he was senior, because there's another...
Well, there's a younger.
Yeah.
Yes, Albert. Yeah. Sir Albert Batten.
Yes, sir.
Absolutely.
Respect is due, yes.
A man of short stature, but grand will.
There you go.
Martha Rusbolt raised her family here basically by herself. Worked tirelessly to do that, and also stepped up to become a member of the board for many, many years, working, as did so many of these other people, in unifying the community as much as she possibly could and getting things done. In her later years, Martha became a registered medium, and there are probably a good many people out there still today that remember sitting in circles and sitting privately with Martha as a medium, and her ability to be extremely frank and exact. She was so much that way. Old friends here, Bob and Eva Love, they were a battery to the community, the two of them.
That's a great word.
Not so much as that they were practicing mediums or healers, but they were, as I say, a battery to the community because they exuded the essence of that name.
They lived up to it.
Yes, they certainly did.
You know, Lilydale is not just about mediums in every house. But that's not the case. People who have houses here are not necessarily registered mediums or even serving as healers. They're here because they love spiritualism, and they're supporting this beautiful community of Lilydale and what it stands for, and for spiritualism. So we need those people.
And in essence, it's not just about that people come here out of a love of spiritualism. They come here so very, very often, if not most of the time, because of their love of humanity and an understanding that we're here together to, at some point in time, finally come to a realization that everyone who walks upon the surface of this earth is related to one another spiritually, if not genetically. Clara Dalkey, another medium who served tirelessly and effortlessly as a medium. Clara would tell you where the bear went in the woods.
Oh boy.
She was good at it and had a sense of humor.
She knows how to track things, huh?
Oh, she could, and I'll tell you, she made no qualms about straightening a bent wire somewhere out, and was extremely verbal in telling people that things aren't always the way you would like them to be, but you better get used to it because that's the way life is. Work on it. that was Clara.
There are a lot of folks in Lilydale that have that bluntness, it seems.
Marjorie Bergdorf and her husband were from Ohio. They were a couple of people who were of an idea that if it was broken, you could always fix it and make it usable. Marge was pretty much that way in counseling people as a medium. Dale, on the other hand, was a master carpenter who served in the Navy during the Second World War. Shortly before Dale passed away, he came back to say hello, and we sat at the picnic table in my backyard and conversed for a while, and we had shared a great deal of time together working on things, but I think the time that we shared together, which was most important to both of us, was going down here and fishing for bass in the lake.
Oh yes, Ray Taft likes to fish.
And
So he needs a good fishing buddy from time to time.
I seem to be getting a bunch of grandchildren that are becoming
That's true.
back.
That's true.
Dale was a man who enjoyed life, and really enjoyed life because he kept himself busy doing things. Marge kept herself busy serving people as a counselor, and the two of them together, as far as I'm concerned, left an indelible etching on my life. Nice. Because they are those whom I call loved ones. Anna Mae Dodds was also from Ohio. Anna Mae and her husband Paul and their children would come here summers. And Anna Mae would work as a medium at the Stump, in the auditorium, at her house. And she was another lady who could tell you exactly what or which way the wind was blowing and what was in it. She was an extremely loving person, but she was as frank as she needed to be to make things appear to you in a cognitive way. Now, Del Cummings here is somebody who...
He's riding around in a golf cart there.
Wasn't as, so much of a medium. He spent a good portion of his life here. And I found out just recently that Del was a World War I veteran. Oh. Now, Del is Betty Schultz's father. Ah. Betty Cummins Schultz.
Yeah, back to Betty here. Here's
Yes.
Betty again.
Now,
she's a registered medium here in Lilydale.
Del spent his life here up until his final days, but as I said, he was a member of the Quartermaster's Corps in World War I. I think Dell was probably, as I saw him,
It's about 11. Okay. So we have about a few more minutes left.
a keen observer
10 minutes.
of human nature. Helen Schaefer was a medium here. She and her husband Edward came here after their retirement and settled into a house down on Cleveland Avenue. And as with so many and all of the people here on the walls, considered spending those last years of their life helping to unify and bond the community together, and worked, both of them, she as a medium and Edward as a healer, in bonding spiritualists and humanity together.
Yes.
Now, Bob and Rose Schatzel,
Oh, yeah, the Schatzels.
both were mediums,
That's true.
and
Husband and wife team.
they traveled and worked tirelessly
Yeah,
to
that's true.
bring people together in faith. And their faith was so strong that they fostered dozens, I believe, of children throughout their life, as well as raising children of their own. They were those.
They had a big house in Lilydale, and that even had stained glass in the window.
Oh, that was something that Bob did.
Yeah, he
Bob,
liked to do the stained glass.
over here, this gentleman here,
Carlton Weber, we love him.
you look at the smile on Carl's face, and if you didn't know him, I can express why that smile was on Carl's face, because Carl loved people.
Oh, yeah.
He loved humanity. He loved the arts.
Music was his passion.
Music absolutely was his passion.
He worked at the college as a music professor
As a
and teaching
professor of
and
music.
mentoring many music students.
Voice teacher, musician.
He played the
arranger.
organ in the Lilydale Auditorium in the summer. People might remember him from there. And also the Church of Living Spirit. He was their organist for so many years.
He was until the last breath drawn.
Oh, gosh.
Carl-
Literally last breath.
Yeah, Carl was certainly on top of it.
Yes.
Uh,
Fun man, for sure. He was fun, and he really gave us music. He gave us music.
yes, he did. And that energy that Carl shared with us, going to be here forever.
Sure.
Florence Rivers, Catherine Baxter's sister. Florence worked forever in the office here at Lilydale.
Forever.
And the family was and continues to be embodiment of spiritualists. They are those people. Edith Clens, she and her husband Urban came here and retired. And Edith carried on for a while as a hairdresser, but when it came time every month for me to get my hair trimmed in a military haircut, Edith would come up to the house and give me with a pair of shears and a comb.
So she's probably trying to get at this right now.
And, yeah, I think Edith would say I earned that.
Oh, there you go.
Shirley?
Oh, Shirley Conkin Smith.
Shirley
So many
is...
people remember her, I'm sure.
Shirley is...
She literally had a halo over her head.
Well, doesn't it look... Doesn't that... She has the face of an angel.
Wings. Yeah.
And the heart of an angel, too. Pauline Kay.
I just want to say with Shirley Calkins Smith, registered medium here in Lilydale, her daughter, Stephanie Churchak, was also a registered medium.
Yes.
So just like my mother, Bonnie White, and I were mother-daughter mediums, Shirley and Stephanie were mother-daughter mediums. And it wasn't that long ago that Stephanie passed, and both great mediums, and Shirley had a way of just being so generous and sweet-hearted with people. She knew how to take them under her wing and help
absolutely.
them
She was,
move forward.
She was very much an Earth Mother.
Oh, for sure.
Shirley was an Earth Mother.
And then Pauline Kay, registered Lilydale medium. She was She could make me laugh. I'll tell you, she could make me laugh.
And she had that voice from the island too.
Yeah,
God
and
bless her.
I sat with her one day, and she had she'd been in South Africa, and she was telling me about her life, and that she really did love mediumship so much, and she did a lot to took initiative with the Marion Skidmore Library to get that back into shape again when it had fallen out of, the books had gotten a little bit discombobulated. She went in there and organized a whole team that got things started, got things back in order again. And
that is certainly
and she would go out almost every single Forest Temple service, Inspiration Stump service. She would be there to help her fellow mediums.
She was there.
Serve.
She was there to serve. Mm-hmm. And we come down here. I didn't know Kit as
Duffy,
well.
She
was the
loved
lady,
country
music.
She loved country music, but she would always request before she served. She wanted the Battle Hymn of the Republic. She wanted those kind of patriotic songs. That was really important to her, and she was one of those kind of zippy ladies.
She was very, very
registered medium
as you say, zippy, but a medium who shared the best of life. Shared the best of life with those that came to her for counseling. Donna Regal, the same way.
Another registered medium.
Donna, I remember as a lady who worked family, and
she was a nurse
and her career, and she was probably one of the most down-to-earth, childlike people that I ever met.
Notice that down-to-earth, childlike people.
And she
loved being spiffed and beautiful every day of her life.
She was lovely in that respect.
She liked to be well put together.
She could do things with a paintbrush. She decorated the inside of her house in Disney characters.
Yeah, she loved Tinkerbell. That was her favorite. So I was looking at this green, and I'm thinking how perfect that is. Yes. And one time for one of the masquerade balls, in the summer, she dressed up as Tinkerbell.
Yes, she did.
And she always had a fabulous body, so she pulled it off beautifully.
They say, look, set of wings and all. I remember
exactly, yes. Aw, Elaine Thomas.
Elaine has just passed away into the next expression of life.
Yes.
But she put her entire life into a spiritualist ethic, raised her family, and worked tirelessly along with so many people that are of her generation and the generation before her in bringing faith to persons in so many different faiths.
Yes.
And she was extremely knowledgeable and well aware of the needs of humanity, and served as best as she could, and did it with a smile.
Yes, a registered medium for decades and decades.
Yeah.
Founder of the Fellowships of the Spirit.
She was schooled by a lot of the old mediums.
Oh yes.
Reverend
Wendley, I know she's with her.
Yeah. John White is...
Oh, should we do Jacqueline real quick? Jacqueline Franchina. She's the sister of Gretchen Clark and Sherry Lee Calkins,
yes,
who are also registered mediums. Jackie was a registered medium and loved jewelry. She can make her own lovely, lovely pieces. Lovely jewelry.
She had faith.
That family is of many generations of spiritualism.
Very, very much so. They're old spiritualists, but I think that this woman expressed a faith in not only faith, but in people and in the natural world, that gave her, as you see her eyes cast toward the sky, not a wonderment, but a coming on greater understanding of all of those cosmic things that many, many people don't take into consideration.
And I know her daughter continues.
The family is all continuing in on that path.
And now we have, should we end with John White?
I think this is a good place to go. I think above all of these people that we've gone through so far, I have to say that as I knew John, it was a little bit more than looking into one another's eyes. Because I believe that when our eyes met, we looked into one another's very soul and saw the need for each of us to do as much as we possibly could that had been reflected into our lives by all of these people around us.
Yes.
And remembering what had been given to us by others to reflect it. You know, that pay it forward thing?
Yes.
And whether it be that we speak of our religious faith together or we do not, that thing of faith which binds us as beings here in this physical part of our lives is the most important thing that we can understand as a binder to all of those things around us.
Yes.
We start out virtually helpless, but wondering. And in that short period of time from our physical birth up until the time that we get our legs underneath of us, the next part of our journey ends us up in a building such as this with others of our own kind, of different ages.
Different ages and stages, and
But
it's just so wonderful to see the different faces and help people connect the dots. And I know a lot of people remember John in particular. His passing was pretty recent as well. And he taught for many years in Lilydale and was a registered medium here.
Doctor.
And it's just been fun over the years. When I was registered medium and he was registered medium, and people would wonder if he was my father. And so I would get calls, people wanting to schedule for him, and he would get calls, people wanting to schedule for me. And he even admitted one time that when he was on the phone with a lady, he started going ahead and scheduling her with me. And that was the kind of humor he had. And then he finally told her, well, sorry, I can't really do that.
But, and that was, we knew John gentle.
Yes.
An extremely gentle man.
He loved mantras and meditation and would go on retreats.
John was also...
And travel to India.
He was also a practitioner of Tai Chi Chuan.
Yes.
The old style. The old Yang style of Tai Chi Chuan. And I think in that we when we meet someone of John's studied stature, he studied all the time.
Yes. Yes.
Everything that he could. And it gave him the ability to share something valuable with every individual that he came in contact with.
Yes. Yeah.
Education is the most important product of humanity. And being that it's in this building where we've been able to share this morning, I think you would agree that each one of these persons whose portraits hang here on this wall would agree with us. We're here to learn.
Yes. Yes. We're here to learn.
From the first day on.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much, Ray, for sharing your insights into these various people on the wall. They're not just 2D pieces of paper that have some color on it. These are representative of people that have lived and breathed here in Lilydale and done their best to support spiritualism and this community.
Well, if they hang my picture on this wall someday, I hope there's somebody here to remember me.
There we go. And thank you to Ron Nagy, who's steering the ship of of Lilydale history. We really appreciate you opening up this space for us today and being always so welcoming and really trying to help educate people. I know that there will be ghost walks this summer, right?
We're not
Yes,
fully
please.
aware whether that's been continued as part of the program, but we'll see what we will see.
So hopefully you'll be able to see Ray Taft and Ron Nagy do their thing this summer with the ghost walks. We'll see how life brings it.
11 to 4.
And Ron,
11 to 4, 7 days.
there you go. Ron will be here almost every day of the summer season to answer your history questions here in Lilydale, 11 a.m. to 4 p.m. And the Lilydale Museum, let's tell them where to find us here.
We are at the, on East Street, right across from the firehouse and the Healing Temple.
In the Healing Temple. So if you're on East Street and you're near the fire hall and the Healing Temple, you will easily find this special building, the Lilydale Museum. And the 11 a.m. to 4 p.m., that is for the summer hours. This spring, pre-season, when are you going to be open, Ron?
If you can catch me. I'm in and out. If you see the flag out,
Yes.
stop in.
Stop in. And sometimes you're open on weekends just
if it's
before
not
the
rainy
season.
or windy or cold
Yeah,
or something, I'm
exactly.
usually open.
If it's good weather and people are going to be flocking here to walk around in Lilydale. The season, for those of you who want to know when that starts, just as a reminder, the season starts on Friday, June 23rd, and this is a 10-week summer season, so there's lots to do. You can look at the events listing on the LilydaleAssembly.org website, and I believe they are already taking registrations for the Maplewood Hotel and for the summer workshops, so you're going to want to go ahead and get yourself registered now. Things are booking in for readings. My summer is getting very booked in very fast, so if you're wanting a reading with a certain medium, you're going to want to contact them right away. You can find the list of the Lilydale mediums on the LilydaleAssembly.org website. And just can't end quite yet, Ray has something else he'd like to share with all of you.
Through the many years that I knew this man and his coming here every summer, forever.
And tell them who this is. This is Mario.
Tullis
Over 50 years.
Mario Tullis, Tollis. Yep.
was a paratrooper in the 82nd Airborne Division during the Second World War. Don't forget these guys.
Don't forget these guys. He sat frequently on the Lilydale Maplewood Hotel porch, and he would chat with people, and he is definitely a beloved person here in Lilydale. We dearly missed. I can't remember, how old did he end up getting then?
90 odd.
90 odd
He made it
years.
to the D-Day land.
Yep.
Wow.
There.
So thank you to Mario for all of his service, and also for being here in Lilydale. And thank you to all of the people who were talked about today, mentioned today. I know that they appreciate being remembered, and they appreciate that Lilydale is here and that we are doing our best to keep it strong and to remember them and to remember that which is important about our own souls and our own spiritual journey, and how beautiful it is we are able to share that through spiritualism, through mediumship that tells us that love never dies and that we have eternal life and that healing is at hand. All right, everyone, thank you so much for tuning in today to Wednesdays with Willa. I'll see you next week for another great show. Thanks again, Ron and Ray. We really
Welcome.
appreciate you guys. Bye-bye.